The old cafe sat at the edge of the colony's main street, where the dome met the red Martian sky. It was a small place called Mabel's Moonside Café, with wooden tables that had been brought all the way from Earth and windows that looked out at the dusty hills beyond the dome. The smell of coffee and fresh bread filled the air, and the sound of people talking made the place feel warm and alive. In the darkest corner of the cafe, far from the windows and the other customers, sat a stranger. He was tall, very tall, with skin that looked gray and strange in the dim light. His eyes were deep purple, like the color of space itself, and they held a sadness that seemed older than the stars. He wore a long dark coat that covered most of his body, and he sat very still, like a statue that had learned to breathe. His name was Kethvorin, though no one in this small cafe knew it. No one knew that he was the Emperor of the Galactic Ascendancy, ruler of 17 star systems, and commander of the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. No one knew that his ships waited in orbit above this tiny human colony, carrying enough weapons to turn the whole world to dust. He had come here in secret, wearing a device that made him look smaller and less frightening than he truly was. His advisors would have been angry if they knew. His guards would have been terrified. But Kethvorin was tired of advisors and guards. He was tired of war rooms and battle plans. He was tired of everything. For 300 years, he had ruled the Ascendancy. He had conquered enemies and expanded his empire across the stars. He had done everything an emperor was supposed to do. But lately, he felt empty inside. He felt like a machine going through motions that no longer had meaning. The humans were the reason he was here. Tomorrow, he would have to make a decision about them. The Galactic Council, made up of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy, had voted to bring the humans under control. They were spreading too fast, these strange, short-lived creatures. They were building colonies on worlds that should have killed them. They were adapting to places where no species had any right to survive. The elder races were afraid. And when ancient empires grew afraid, they destroyed the thing that frightened them. Kethvorin had agreed to lead the subjugation. It made sense from a strategic view. The humans were young and weak. It would be quick, almost painless. Better now than later, when they grew strong enough to fight back. But he had wanted to see them first. He had wanted to understand what he was about to conquer. So he sat in a corner booth of a human cafe, drinking a bitter black liquid they called coffee, and watching these strange creatures live their small, brief lives. They laughed so easily, these humans. They touched each other constantly, pats on the back and hugs and hands held across tables. They seemed to find joy in the simplest things. Kethvorin found it confusing. His own people did not touch. They did not laugh. They lived for thousands of years and spent most of that time in careful, measured silence. He was thinking about this when a small voice broke through his thoughts. "Hey, mister, you look really sad." Kethvorin looked down. A human child stood beside his table, staring up at him with big brown eyes. She was tiny, barely reaching the height of his elbow, even when he was sitting. Her dark hair was a mess of curls that seemed to have a life of their own, and she was missing one of her front teeth. In her arms, she clutched a stuffed animal with long floppy ears and worn fur. Human children were not supposed to approach strangers. Kethvorin had read the cultural reports. This was unusual behavior. "I am fine," he said carefully. His voice was deep and rough, not used to speaking the human language out loud. The girl tilted her head to one side, studying him the way a scientist might study something under a microscope. "No, you're not," she said, as if stating the most obvious fact in the world. "My mom says people who sit alone in corners are either thinking too hard or feeling too much. Which one are you?" Before Kethvorin could answer, the girl climbed into the booth across from him. She moved without fear, without hesitation, as if sitting with strange aliens in dark corners was something she did every day. No one had ever sat with Kethvorin uninvited. In 300 years of rule, not a single being in the galaxy had simply decided to join him without permission. Ambassadors requested audiences months in advance. His own heirs bowed before approaching him. Even his enemies treated him with a kind of terrified respect. That this tiny human child had simply climbed into his booth and made herself comfortable. Maybe both, he admitted, surprising himself with the truth. The girl nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "I'm Lily," she said. "This is Mr. Hops." She held up the stuffed animal. It had clearly been loved for many years. Its fur was thin in places, and one of its button eyes was newer than the other. "He's a rabbit," Lily continued. "From Earth. Real rabbits are on Earth too, but we can't have them here because of the biodome rules. So I have Mr. Hops instead." Kethvorin did not know what a rabbit was. His empire contained thousands of species across countless worlds, but he had never heard of this small creature. "What's your name?" Lily asked. He paused. His true name was long and complicated, filled with sounds that human throats could not make. But the short version, the name his mother had used when he was young, before he became emperor, before the weight of crowns and conquests had bent his shoulders. "That name might work. You may call me Keth," he said. Lily grinned, showing the gap where her tooth had been. "That's a weird name," she said happily. "But I like it. It sounds like a sneeze. Keth." She pretended to sneeze, then laughed at her own joke. Something strange happened in Kethvorin's chest, a feeling he did not recognize. It took him a moment to understand that he wanted to smile. "Where's your mom?" Lily asked. "I do not have a mother." "Not anymore." "Oh." Lily's face fell into an expression of pure sympathy. "That's really sad." "I'm sorry, Keth. Did she die?" "Long ago. Very long ago." "My dad's gone too," Lily said. "Not dead, though. He's an explorer. He finds new planets for people to live on. He's been gone for 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. But he's coming back soon. Mom promises." She said it with complete certainty, the kind of faith that only children possessed. Kethvorin wondered what it felt like to believe so completely in something. "Do you want to see my drawings?" Lily asked, already pulling a crumpled stack of papers from her small backpack. "I'm really good at drawing. Mrs. Patterson says I have artistic vision, which means I see things differently. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I like it." She spread the papers across the table. And Kethvorin, Emperor of 17 star systems, Conqueror of worlds, found himself looking at crayon drawings made by a 7-year-old girl, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something other than emptiness. The drawings were messy and colorful and completely wonderful. Lily had used every crayon in her collection, and she had not worried about staying inside the lines. There were stick figures floating in space, their arms stretched wide like they were trying to hug the stars. There were rockets with crooked windows and flames shooting out the bottom in orange and red and yellow. There was what looked like a purple dog with wings and 3 tails. "That's my dad," Lily said, pointing to one of the floating figures. He had a big smile on his round face and a space helmet that was mostly just a circle with a line across the middle. "He's out there somewhere, finding places for people to live. Mom says he's probably discovered 100 new worlds by now." Kethvorin studied the drawing carefully. On his world, art was precise and mathematical. Every line had to be perfect. Every color had to follow rules that were thousands of years old. But this was something different. This was pure feeling put onto paper. "This is very good," he said, and he meant it. Lily beamed. "Thanks. I'm going to be an artist when I grow up. Or an explorer like my dad. Or maybe someone who teaches aliens about humans. Mom says that's a real job now since we joined the galaxy. She pointed to another drawing. This one showed 3 figures standing in front of a small house. One was tall with long hair, one was small with curly hair, and one was even smaller with floppy ears. "That's me, Mom, and Mr. Hops in front of our house," Lily explained. "We live in Section 7 of the colony. It's small, but Mom says that's okay because we have each other, and that's what matters." "You have no other family?" "Grandma and Grandpa are on Earth. We call them on the holoscreen every week. And Mom has friends who help us. Mrs. Chun brings food sometimes when Mom works late. And Mr. Okonkwo fixes things in our house when they break. Mom says we have a village even if it's not blood family." Kethvorn thought about his own family. He had heirs, children born to continue his bloodline and his rule. But he had not raised them. He had barely spoken to them. They were kept in special schools, trained by tutors, prepared for the day they might take his place. He saw them once a year at formal ceremonies where they bowed and called him Emperor instead of Father. "Do you have kids?" Lily asked, as if she could read his thoughts. "I have heirs," he said slowly. "It is not the same thing. Why not?" The question was so simple, so direct. On his home world, no one would dare ask an emperor such a thing. But Lily was not from his home world. She was just a child who wanted to understand. "I do not know," Kethvorn admitted. "I have never thought about it before." Lily shrugged. "You should think about it. Kids need their parents. I miss my dad every single day, but at least I know he loves me. He sends me messages from space. He tells me about the planets he finds and the weird rocks he sees. He says he thinks about me every time he looks at the stars." She paused, looking at Kethvorn with an expression that was too wise for her young face. "Do your kids know you love them?" The question hit Kethvorn like a physical blow. Did they know? Had he ever told them? Had he ever shown them in any way that they mattered to him beyond their purpose as heirs? He could not answer. The silence stretched between them. "It's okay," Lily said gently. "You can tell them later. It's not too late. Mom says it's never too late to say important things." She pulled out more drawings, filling the table with colors and shapes. One showed aliens of different kinds standing together, holding hands. Some had tentacles, some had wings, some looked like nothing Kethvorn had ever seen. "I made this one after we learned about the galaxy in school," Lily said. "There are so many different kinds of people out there. My teacher says that's beautiful. She says variety is what makes the universe interesting." "Some would say it makes the universe dangerous," Kethvorn said. "Why?" "Different isn't scary. Different is just different. Like how some people like chocolate and some people like vanilla. That doesn't mean they have to fight about it. Some differences are bigger than ice cream flavors." Lily laughed. "That's what grown-ups always say. But I don't think it's true. Big differences or small differences, it's still just people being different. And people can always find things they have in common if they try. What if they don't want to try? Then they're being stubborn," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Like Tommy Morrison in my class. He said he hated everyone who wasn't from Earth. But then he found out his best friend Marcus was born on the moon, and he got over it. He was just scared of things he didn't know. Fear makes people say dumb stuff." Kethvorn thought about the Galactic Council. He thought about the ancient races who ruled the stars and their fear of these new, fast-spreading humans. Were they any different from Tommy Morrison? Were they just scared of something they didn't understand? "What do you do?" Lily asked, changing the subject with the speed that only children possessed. "My mom fixes ships at the spaceport. She's really good at it. She says engines talk to her, and she just has to listen." "I manage things," Kethvorn said. "Many things. Too many things. Like a boss? Something like that." Lily wrinkled her nose. My mom's boss is mean. He yells a lot and never says thank you. Are you a mean boss? Kefvorn thought about how his subjects trembled when he walked past. He thought about generals who stuttered when reporting to him and advisors who never disagreed with him, even when he was wrong. He thought about the fear that surrounded him like a cloak wherever he went. I do not know, he said honestly. Perhaps I am. I have never asked. You should ask, Lily said. That's what Mom says. Good bosses ask people how they're doing. Bad bosses just tell people what to do. Which kind do you want to be? Before Kefvorn could answer, Lily pulled something else from her backpack. It was a worn deck of cards, the edges soft from years of use. Do you know how to play Go Fish? She asked. I do not. That's okay. I'll teach you. It's really easy. Even grown-ups can learn it. She began dealing the cards with practiced hands, explaining the rules as she went. The game was simple, almost childishly simple compared to the strategic games Kefvorn had mastered over centuries. But as they played, as Lily asked him if he had any threes and giggled when he didn't, something began to loosen in his chest. Go Fish, she announced triumphantly when he asked for a card she didn't have. Kefvorn drew a card from the pile. He had 17 star systems. He commanded armies. He decided the fate of worlds. And right now, he was trying very hard to win a children's card game against a 7-year-old girl. He lost 3 games in a row. Lily celebrated each victory with a little dance in her seat, and Kefvorn found that he did not mind losing at all. They played 6 more games. Kefvorn lost every single one, though he began to suspect that Lily was not always honest about which cards she held. When he asked if she had any 5s and she said no, he saw her quickly hide a 5 behind her other cards. But he said nothing. The cheating seemed to be part of the game somehow, a test to see if he was paying attention or if he was the kind of person who would get angry about such small things. He was not that kind of person. At least, not anymore. Not here. You're really bad at this, Lily said cheerfully, gathering up the cards after her latest victory. I am learning, Kefvorn replied. Perhaps next time I will win. Maybe, but probably not. I'm really good at Go Fish. I beat my mom every time too. Outside the cafe windows, the Martian sun was beginning to set. The sky turned from pink to deep purple, and the first stars became visible through the dome. Somewhere up there, beyond those stars, the Emperor's fleet waited. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, all waiting for his command. Tomorrow, he would have to decide. The council expected an answer. The fleet expected orders. The elder races expected him to do what he had always done, to conquer and control and bring order to chaos. But right now, sitting across from a human child who was carefully organizing her cards by color because she liked them that way, Kefvorn felt the weight of that decision more heavily than ever before. Kef, you're doing the sad thing again. He looked up. Lily was watching him with concern in her young eyes. I am sorry. I have much on my mind. Is it about your job? Yes. Is it a hard decision? The hardest I have ever made. Lily nodded seriously. She put down her cards and folded her hands on the table like a small businesswoman about to discuss important matters. What's it about? Maybe I can help. Mom says sometimes it helps to talk about problems out loud. Kefvorn looked at this small human child and wondered how to explain. How could he tell her that he was deciding whether to conquer her entire species? How could he explain the politics of empires and the fears of ancient races? It is about people, he said finally. Many people. I must decide whether to be kind to them or to be careful with them. Why can't you be both? Because sometimes being careful means being unkind. It means making choices that hurt people to keep other people safe. Lily thought about this. She picked up Mr. Hops and held him close, as if consulting with her stuffed rabbit about matters of galactic importance. "My mom says you can be both," she said after a moment. "She says being kind doesn't mean being stupid. It means being brave enough to try good things first. Like when Tommy Morrison was being mean to Marcus. The teacher could have just punished Tommy. That would have been careful. But instead, she talked to him about why he was scared, and now Tommy and Marcus are friends. That was kind and smart. What if the good things don't work? What if being kind just makes things worse?" "Then you tried," Lily said simply, "and that matters. If you try to be kind and it doesn't work, at least you know you're a good person who tried. But if you're mean first without even trying to be nice, then you never know what could have happened." She looked at him with complete certainty in her eyes. "Mr. Hops says people are mostly nice if you give them a chance. Even the scary-looking ones." Cathvorn looked at his own hands. In this disguise, they were gray and clawed, strange and frightening by human standards. But his true form was worse, a crystalline giant that had made entire armies surrender just by appearing before them. "What if someone has already done bad things?" he asked quietly. "What if they have hurt many people? Can they still choose to be kind?" Lily looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and put her small hand on top of his large gray one. The touch was so unexpected that Cathvorn froze. "My mom says every day you wake up and get to pick who you want to be," Lily said. "Yesterday doesn't get to decide. You made bad choices before. Okay, that's sad. But today you can make good choices. Tomorrow you can make more good choices. The past is already done. You can't change it. But the future is still waiting for you to pick." Cathvorn stared at the small hand on his. When was the last time someone had touched him with kindness? When was the last time anyone had looked at him and seen not an emperor to fear, but just a person who might need comfort? He could not remember. "It is not that simple," he said, but his voice was weak. "Why not? Grown-ups always say things are complicated. But mostly I think grown-ups just make things complicated because they're scared of making them simple." "What do you mean?" Lily shrugged. "Like when my mom didn't want to ask Mrs. Chun for help, even though we needed it. She said it was complicated and she didn't want to bother anyone, and what would people think? But I just went next door and asked Mrs. Chun if she could help us. And Mrs. Chun said yes and brought us food, and now they're best friends." Mom was making it complicated because she was scared. But it was actually simple. She squeezed his hand gently. "Maybe your big decision is like that. Maybe you're making it complicated because you're scared. And it's actually simple." Cathvorn thought about the council. He thought about the endless debates and political calculations and strategic analyses. He thought about the thousands of reports and projections and risk assessments that sat in his desk waiting for his decision. And he thought about what Lily had just said, thought maybe it was simple. Maybe the question was not about strategy or safety or the balance of power in the galaxy. Maybe the question was just about what kind of person he wanted to be. Did he want to be someone who chose fear? Or someone who chose hope? Did he want to be the emperor who conquered because it was easier? Or the person who tried kindness because it was right? "You are very wise," Cathvorn said slowly. "For someone so young." Lily grinned. "Mom says I'm an old soul in a little body. I don't know what that means exactly, but I think it's good." She pulled her hand back and started shuffling the cards again. "Do you want to play one more game before I have to go? Mom said she'd pick me up at sunset, and it's almost time." "Yes," Cathvorn said. "I would like that very much." They played one more round of Go Fish. Lily won again, but this time Cathvorn came close. He even caught her trying to hide a card and made her give it up, which made her laugh so hard she almost fell off her seat. As they played, Cathvorn made a decision. Not the final decision, not yet, but a small one. A first step. Tomorrow, he would not vote for conquest. Tomorrow, he would stand before the council and speak for something else. He did not know what exactly, but he knew that he would not be the one to destroy these strange, wonderful, impossibly brave creatures who raised their children to approach strangers with kindness. Lily had taught him something that 300 years of rule had not. She had reminded him that power without compassion was just another word for cruelty. And he was tired of being cruel. The cafe door opened, and a woman's voice called out a name that made Lily jump up from her seat. The game was over. But for Kethvarn, something new had just begun. The woman who burst through the cafe door had the same dark curly hair as Lily, though hers was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore a work uniform stained with engine grease, and her face was a storm of emotions. Fear, anger, relief, and terror all fought for control of her expression. "Lily!" The shout cut through the quiet cafe like a knife. Everyone turned to look. The old man reading his newspaper in the corner. The young couple sharing a slice of cake. The barista behind the counter who had been cleaning glasses. Lily's mother rushed across the room, moving faster than Kethvarn would have thought possible for someone who had clearly just finished a long shift of work. She grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her from the booth, her eyes never leaving the strange gray figure sitting across from her daughter. "Baby, what have I told you about talking to strangers?" Her voice shook with barely controlled panic. "I've been looking everywhere for you. Mrs. Patterson said you left the daycare center an hour ago. Do you have any idea how scared I was? But Mom, I was fine. I was just playing cards with my friend Keth. He's really nice and really bad at Go Fish, and he was sad, so I kept him company. And, Lily, please." The mother's voice cracked. She was holding her daughter so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. "You can't just wander off and talk to people you don't know. You can't." She looked at Kethvarn then, really looked at him, and he saw the fear in her eyes. Not fear of him specifically, though that was part of it. Fear of the unknown. Fear of a universe that could take her daughter as easily as it had taken her husband to the distant stars. Fear that she was failing as a mother, failing to protect the one precious thing she had left. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said, her voice tight with forced politeness. "She just wanders off sometimes. She doesn't understand how dangerous it can be. She's just a child. She doesn't know. Mom, this is my friend Keth." Lily interrupted, pulling against her mother's grip. "He's really nice, I promise. He was lonely and sad, and I helped him feel better. We played games, and I showed him my drawings, and he said they were really good, and, Lily, that's enough." The girl fell silent, sensing that her mother was not going to budge on this. But she looked at Kethvarn with worried eyes, as if apologizing for the scene. Kethvarn rose slowly from the booth. He moved carefully, keeping his hands visible, trying to make himself look as small and unthreatening as possible. It was strange, he thought, having to make himself seem harmless. Usually he wanted the opposite effect. "Your daughter is remarkable," he said to the mother. His voice was gentle, softer than it had been in years. "She has been very kind to me. I apologize if my presence caused concern." The mother stared at him. He could see her processing his words, trying to figure out if he was dangerous, trying to decide what to do. Human faces were so expressive. Every thought, every emotion played out across their features like actors on a stage. "Well," she said finally, her voice still stiff with caution. "Thank you for keeping an eye on her, I suppose. But we really need to go, of course." Lily pulled free from her mother's grip and ran back to the table. Before anyone could stop her, she grabbed her drawings and shoved them into Kethvarn's hands. "Here," she said, "you can keep these. So you have something to look at when you're sad. Pictures make everything better. Lily, I'm sure the gentleman doesn't want. I would be honored to keep them, Cathvorin said. He looked down at the crumpled papers in his hands. The stick figure astronaut, the purple-winged dog, the aliens holding hands across the galaxy. They are beautiful. Lily beamed. The one with my dad is my favorite. He's out there finding new worlds for people. But you can have a copy. I made extras because I like to give them to people who need them. Something tight and painful moved in Cathvorin's chest. He had received gifts before. Tribute from conquered worlds. Offerings from terrified ambassadors. Golden statues and precious gems and artifacts of immeasurable value. None of them had ever meant anything. But these crumpled crayon drawings from a 7-year-old girl, these meant something. These were given freely, with no expectation of anything in return. Just kindness, offered to a stranger who looked sad. Thank you, Lily, he said. I will treasure them. Lily's mother was watching this exchange with a confused expression. The fear in her eyes was fading, replaced by something else. Curiosity, perhaps. Or the beginning of understanding. Mom, can Keth come for dinner? Lily asked suddenly. He doesn't have anyone to eat with. He said so. Lily, we can't just invite strangers to dinner. But he's not a stranger. He's my friend. And Mrs. Shun was a stranger before she started bringing us food, and now she's not. Friends start as strangers, Mom. That's how it works. The mother rubbed her forehead with one grease-stained hand. She looked tired, Cathvorin realized. Not just physically tired from work, but tired in the way that people got when they carried too much weight alone for too long. He recognized it because he felt the same way. I must decline, Cathvorin said, rescuing the mother from having to refuse. I have business to attend to. But I thank you for the invitation, Lily. It means more than you know. Lily's face fell, but only for a moment. Okay, but if you come back to the cafe, you have to tell me. We can play more Go Fish. I'll even teach you how to cheat properly so you can win sometimes. Lily, her mother said, scandalized. You're not supposed to cheat. Everyone cheats a little, Lily said with the casual wisdom of a child who had figured out how the world worked. The trick is to cheat at things that don't matter, so you don't have to cheat at things that do. That's what Grandpa says. Cathvorin laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but real. He could not remember the last time he had laughed. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man, he said. He's the best. He taught me cards before he went back to Earth. He says I'm a natural. The mother finally smiled, just a little. The fear had almost completely left her eyes now. I'm sorry, she said to Cathvorin. She's a lot to handle sometimes. She sees the good in everyone. I keep trying to teach her to be careful, but she just keeps believing the people are good. Perhaps she is right to believe that, Cathvorin said. Perhaps we should all believe it more. The mother looked at him for a long moment, really seeing him for the first time. Not as a threat or a stranger or a scary alien in a corner booth, but as a person. A person who had been touched by her daughter's kindness. Maybe, she said softly. I don't know. The universe is so big, and there's so much that can go wrong. It's hard to keep believing. I know, Cathvorin said. But your daughter makes it easier. She made it easier for me, at least. Lily grabbed Mr. Hobbs from the table and tucked him under her arm. She looked up at Cathvorin with her gap-toothed smile. Remember what I said, she told him. Every day you get to pick who you want to be. Pick good, okay? I believe in you. Then she took her mother's hand and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned and waved. Bye, Kath. Don't be sad. The door closed behind them, and the cafe was quiet again. Cathvorin stood alone in the corner booth, holding a stack of crayon drawings against his chest. Through the window, he watched the mother and daughter walk down the street. Lily was skipping, her curls bouncing, already talking about something new. Her mother was listening, her tired face softened by love dot in his hand. He held the future of their species. Tomorrow he would decide if they lived freely or bowed under the yoke of empire. He carefully folded the drawings and placed them inside his coat, close to where humans believed their hearts were kept. Then he left the cafe and walked into the Martian night, carrying a child's faith with him like a torch against the darkness. The next day, he would stand before the Galactic Council, and he would remember a little girl who believed that strangers could be friends and that every day was a chance to choose kindness. He hoped he was brave enough to prove her right. The High Council chamber was the largest room Kethvorn had ever stood in. It was carved from the heart of an ancient asteroid, with walls that rose so high they disappeared into shadow. 23 species were represented here, sitting in floating platforms arranged in a massive circle around the central speaking floor. Each platform held the leaders of an empire, a federation, a collective consciousness. Together, they ruled more than 1,000 star systems. When Kethvorn entered the chamber, silence fell like a physical weight. He had removed his disguise. He stood in his true form now, a crystalline giant over 8 feet tall, with skin that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. His eyes burned with the purple fire of his ancient bloodline. He was the emperor of the galactic ascendancy. And today, he would decide the fate of humanity. The council recognizes the emperor, the speaker announced. The speaker was an ancient being, older than any civilization present, a creature of pure energy that had witnessed the birth and death of stars. We have gathered to hear your decision regarding the human question. The council has already voted in favor of preemptive action. We await your command to proceed. Kethvorn walked to the center of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the vast silence. Every eye, every sensor, every consciousness was focused on him. In his pocket, folded carefully, were the drawings of a 7-year-old girl. I have walked among them, Kethvorn said. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The Valkyrie ambassador, a massive insectoid creature with glittering compound eyes, leaned forward on his platform. The neural collective of the hive mind buzzed with sudden activity. The ancient tree beings of the root world rustled their branches in surprise. I went to one of their colonies, Kethvorn continued. I disguised myself and sat among them in one of their gathering places. I watched them. I listened to them. I spoke with them. This is highly irregular, the Valkyrie ambassador said. His voice was sharp, clicking with disapproval. The emperor should not risk himself on reconnaissance missions. We had observers for such purposes. Your observers send reports, Kethvorn said. Numbers and statistics and threat assessments. They do not send truth. And what truth did you find among the humans? The question came from the matriarch of the Silicon Mines, a collective intelligence that existed as pure thought inside vast computer networks. Her voice was cold, synthetic, curious. Kethvorn reached into his pocket and pulled out the drawings. He unfolded them carefully, holding them up so the council could see. I was approached by a child, a young female of perhaps 7 Earth years. She saw a stranger sitting alone and sad, and her first instinct was not fear. It was not suspicion. It was compassion. He held up the drawing of the stick-figure astronaut floating among stars. She showed me this picture. Her father, she said. An explorer who had been gone for more than 2 years, searching for new worlds for his people to live on. She misses him every day, but she believes he will come home. She has faith. He held up another drawing, the one with aliens of all kinds holding hands. She drew this after learning about the galaxy in school. Different species standing together. She said variety makes the universe beautiful. She could not understand why different should mean dangerous. Sentimentality is not strategy, The Volcari ambassador said coldly. One child does not represent an entire species. The humans are expanding too quickly. They breed like insects and spread like disease. In 1,000 years, they could threaten all of us. Perhaps, Cathvorin said. Or perhaps in 1,000 years, they could be our greatest allies. Perhaps their energy, their hope, their stubborn belief that tomorrow can be better than today is exactly what this stagnant galaxy needs. The chamber erupted into noise. Protests from the cautious elder races. Curiosity from the younger species. The neural collective hummed with 1,000 simultaneous debates. Cathvorin raised his hand, and silence fell again. When the Emperor commanded attention, the galaxy obeyed. I have ruled the ascendancy for 300 years, he said. I have conquered worlds. I have built an empire. I have done everything that was expected of me, and I have done it well. But yesterday, sitting in a small cafe on a tiny human colony, a 7-year-old child asked me a question that I could not answer. He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled powers of the galaxy. She asked me if I had fun. She asked me if I was kind. She asked me if the people I ruled knew that I cared about them. And I realized that I had spent 3 centuries growing more powerful and less wise with every passing year. The matriarch of the Silicon Mines spoke again. What does this have to do with the human question? Everything, Cathvorin said. Because that child taught me something that this council has forgotten. We fear the humans because they are young and full of potential. We fear them because they do not know their place in the order of things. We fear them because they look at impossible challenges and see opportunities. He stepped forward, his crystalline form catching the light of 1,000 floating lanterns. But that is not something to destroy. That is something to cherish. These creatures live for barely a century, a single heartbeat compared to our eternal spans. And yet, in that heartbeat, they reach for the stars. They build families. They raise children who are taught to show kindness to lonely strangers. He held up the drawing of Lily's father one more time. This man left his family for 2 years to find new worlds for his people. Not for conquest, not for power, but because he believed there were good places waiting to be discovered, places where humans could build new lives and new futures. That is not the act of a species to be feared. That is the act of a species to be admired. The Volcari ambassador rose from his platform, his compound eyes glittering with anger. You speak like a fool drunk on sentiment. The humans are dangerous. Today they explore. Tomorrow they conquer. We have seen this pattern before. We must act now while we still can. And what does that make us? Cathvorin asked. What kind of civilization destroys another because of what it might become? What kind of empire crushes hope because hope makes it uncomfortable? He turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. I have conquered many worlds. I have brought countless species under my rule. And I tell you now that there is no victory in it. There is no glory in making others bow. There is only emptiness, an endless hunger that is never satisfied no matter how many stars you claim. His voice grew stronger, filling the vast chamber with ancient authority. But yesterday, I sat with a human child and played a simple game with cards. I looked at her drawings and listened to her stories. And for the first time in 300 years, I felt something other than the weight of empire. I felt connection. I felt hope. He drew himself up to his full height, towering and magnificent. The humans will not be conquered. Not by my fleet. Not by this council. Instead, I propose something that has never been done in the history of the galaxy. I propose that we invite them in, not as subjects, but as partners. Not as a species to be managed, but as friends to be welcomed. The chamber exploded into chaos. Half the representatives were shouting. The other half were conferring urgently with their advisors. The Valkyrie ambassador looked ready to declare war on the spot, but Cathforan was not finished. I will personally oversee the first diplomatic exchange. I will open trade routes and cultural programs and scientific partnerships. And I will do this because a 7-year-old girl reminded me of something I had forgotten. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the last drawing. It showed 3 figures in front of a small house. A mother, a daughter, and a stuffed rabbit. A family, small and precious and complete in itself. She told me that every day, we get to pick who we want to be. Yesterday does not get to decide. The past does not own the future. We can choose differently. We can choose better. He looked around the chamber one final time. I choose to be kind. I choose to be brave enough to try hope before fear. I choose to believe that strangers can become friends and that the universe is big enough for all of us. He placed his hand over the pocket where the drawings rested against his heart. The human child believed in me. She believed I could choose to be good. I will not prove her wrong. The speaker's voice cut through the noise of the chamber. The Emperor has spoken. The Ascendancy chooses partnership with humanity. Does any representative wish to formally challenge this decision? Silence. Even the Valkyrie ambassador sat back in his seat, his protest dying on his lips. In 300 years, no one had ever successfully challenged the Emperor. No one would start today. Then it is decided. The humans will be welcomed into the galactic community as partners and allies. The conquest fleet will stand down. Diplomatic envoys will be prepared. Cathforan walked out of the chamber with the drawing still pressed against his chest. Behind him, the future of the galaxy shifted on its axis. All because a little girl had seen a lonely stranger and decided to be his friend. 1 year later, the first human ambassador arrived at the Imperial Palace. She came with her family by special request of the Emperor himself. When they entered the throne room, they found the most powerful being in the galaxy sitting on the floor with a deck of cards. Waiting, Lily ran forward and hugged him. And Cathforan, for the second time in his long life, laughed with pure joy.